Okay, good evening. Sorry for the couple-minute delay there. Hear and be heard. We'll do this by calling the roll. Members present are asked to say yes. We ask that all other members listen. Please put your device on mute. And if you're having any issues with difficulty hearing us, let us know once the roll call is complete. Kate Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. Jeremy Clough.
Yes.
Candy Dizikis.
Yes.
Lindsay Fertney.
Yes.
Jennifer Galetta.
Yes.
Susanna Hancock.
Yes.
Beth Munson.
Yes.
Mara Pillsbury.
Yes.
Polly Steverlink.
Yes.
Maddie Vertenden.
Yes.
And I am Michelle Richardson. So we are all here this evening. So now we'd just like to confirm that members of the public that are remotely attending our meeting and public proceedings are also able to be heard by the members. So if we could just have a member of the public unmute themselves to let them know that they could hear that okay, or if anyone's having any difficulties, please let us know.
We are the Stecklers and we can hear you perfectly.
Wonderful. Welcome and thank you for the help. All right, so we are going to ask that folks keep their device on mute unless we are at a point in the conversation with public comment, in which case we ask that folks use the raise hand function. So in Zoom, down the bottom, if you click on participants, it'll open a participant pane, and down at the bottom of that, there's a little blue hand that says raise hand. So if you'd like to share with the board, whether it's during the public hearing or public comment later in the regular agenda, we just ask that you use that raise hand function when we open it up for public comment, and we will call on folks in the order that the hands go up. There is the Zoom chat available. If you're having any technical difficulties, you can put a comment in there, or you can also email the board at board@rsu5.org, which we check periodically throughout the meeting as well. All right, so we will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I would take a motion for consideration and approval to open the public hearing on the proposed school budget for FY 2020-2021. Thank you, Jen. And second from Maura, thank you. So we will go through our roll call here to confirm the opening of the public hearing. Jeremy?
Yes.
Candy?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Susanna?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
I vote yes. Volley?
Yes.
And Maddie?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yes from Kate too.
Oh, see, that's what I have on the first one. I always forget to go back to the top of my list. Thank you, Kate. And I didn't see Liam on, right? Our student rep. Okay. Okay, so we will get started with our public hearing portion of the agenda this evening. I have a couple of comments we'll just read to start, and then we will open it up for questions and comments from the members of the public that have joined us this evening. So good evening and welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to attend this year's remote public hearing on the FY21 board adopted budget. Due to the governor's executive order, this meeting eliminates the need for an annual budget meeting between the three towns. I would like to provide you with a brief overview of the budget. We believe that this budget moves RSU 5 forward in increasing student achievement, social emotional learning, and creating a stronger RSU. On April 1st, 2020, the Board of Directors adopted the FY 2021 budget with a budget increase of $1,239,415, or a 3.62% increase in expenditures. Our state subsidy increased by $312,187 over last year. Then the impact of the coronavirus hit our communities and our families. The board revisited the budget on May 13th and reduced the request further to an increase of $792,405 to the current budget adopted, which is a 2.32% increase in expenditures. Where possible, as we were building the budget, financial resources were reallocated or reduced to lessen the tax impact while still strengthening the educational services for our students. Because of the savings realized this year from the remote learning, the board decided to use $549,000 of those savings designated fund balance to reduce the tax impact. The tax impact of the proposed budget is estimated to be a 0.91% decrease in Durham, a 0.25% increase in Freeport, and a 0.14% increase in Pownell. Our first priority is to maintain class sizes. We project that we will have 2,061 students in RSU 5 next year. In the school year 2014-2015, we had an enrollment of 1,826. Since then, we have welcomed 186 additional students. The high school has increased its enrollment by over 100 students over the past several years, with a projection of 618 students next year, the largest enrollment ever seen at Freeport High School. This increase in enrollment requires adding an additional math teacher and an ed tech at the high school. The district-wide projected enrollment increases of 2.4% aligns with the 2.32% increase in expenditures. Other non-discretionary spending included a need for increased spending in substitute teacher lines, insurance, Region 10, nutrition, fuel, and electricity. Our second priority is to increase student support. To improve math achievement, there is a half-time ed tech request at Freeport Middle School. This allows 8th grade students at Freeport Middle to receive similar math supports as the 6th and 7th grade students. At Mass Landing, an additional 0.2 RTI literacy teacher is being requested to support students in reading and writing. To increase social and emotional supports, we are adding a half-time social worker at the high school. In order to create more equity and student support, a half-time guidance counselor is being requested for the Durham Community School, as well as additional library support. At Pownell Elementary, as Pownell Elementary School creates a half-day pre-K program, there is a need for additional time to the teacher's schedule. And lastly, due to enrollment, an additional half-time pre-K teacher and ed tech is needed at Durham Community School. We are also struggling to have enough buses for all of our co-curricular activities and athletic programs. To reduce having to take students out of school early or eliminate practices or games, we are requesting an additional bus be added to the fleet. If we are in a hybrid model due to COVID-19, this bus will assist in transportation based on new guidelines. We appreciate the continued support that we receive from the community in providing a quality education for all of our students. This proposed budget maintains class sizes of 14 to 22 pre-K through 8th grade, sustains existing programs, strengthens early intervention, and strengthens support in social emotional learning. We hope you can support this budget. The vote on the budget will be held via referendum on Tuesday, July 14th at your local polling locations. We will now receive public input or questions on this year's proposed budget. Before we take the first question, I just want to point out that this is a slightly different model than in prior years. Typically, we would be having our annual budget meeting where we are voting article by article. This is strictly an information session here, and the budget will be voted on in total at the referendum on July 14th. So we just provided tonight's opportunity to allow voters to ask clarifying questions or to provide comment around the board adopted budget. So now if we would like to open up the opportunity for members of the public to ask any questions or provide any comments they may have on the budget as it's presented. On the website are all of the budget documents for the proposed budget for next year, including the public hearing guide for folks that want to see some additional information around what we're discussing this evening. So again, if you'd like to share a comment or a question, we ask that you use the raise hand function in the participant pane, and we will call on folks in the order that those hands go up, and we'll just ask that you provide us your name and the town you live in. What's that? Oh, Neil's iPad. Yeah, I think you're still on mute. I'm trying to actually find his.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you now.
I was on mute. Can you tell us, I downloaded several documents. Can you tell us what document we will see when we are voting? Is this just an up or down total vote, or are we voting on several articles?
So as it relates to the budget, it will be a straight up or down vote on the total expenditure budget, the articles 1 through 11.
And what is that?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
What is that number?
So the proposed budget is $34,984,700.
And that's an up or down vote.
Correct.
And what else will we be voting on?
So in addition to the articles in total, there are also some referendum questions. So the first one is the actual budget and all of those articles. There is the adult education. So actually the total budget for the question is $34,882,700. And then the next one is $209,492, which is the adult ed. The law requires us to split out that portion of the budget for a separate question. And then we have the track and field capital reserve fund, which is, we have a fund that we have set up that we allocate $35,000 a year to put into that savings fund so that there are funds available for replacement down the road. And then we have 2 questions around the Region 10, which is the vocational high school that we share with Brunswick, and SAD 75, so Mount Ararat. So there is their budget as well as a capital reserve for them as well. So those will be the 5 questions that will be on the budget for the school at the referendum.
And those separate line items are included in the total budget?
Yes, I'm just looking at the finance folks across the way to make sure that I'm not.
Yes, I would say that's correct. There are just
It is-
5 questions.
And the money involved in those questions is already included in the total budget we go vote on first?
I want to say 1 and 2 make up the total budget, and the other 3 are included in those 2. So the only, so that 34,984,700, that's the total budget. So that's question 1 plus question 2. That's the total budget. And then the next 3 are to allow funds to go into the reserve as well as the Region 10. Correct. Yeah. So like the Region 10 question 4 is the career and technical education operating budget approved by their board in the amount of $3,016,625. That is not RSU 5's portion of that budget. That is the whole budget for Region 10. Is that correct? Yes. So I'm getting nods from the finance director. Does that make sense, Neil?
Yes. So just one comment to anybody who's listening in the citizenry of RSU 5. I'm opposed to this budget for a number of reasons. One of them is the state's in the middle of a financial crisis. They're going to have significantly less revenues next year. The state's going to have significantly less revenue next year, which means you're either going to have to cut spending or local taxes are going to go up significantly. So I think it'd be a good time now to not increase your spending at all, stick with last year's budget, and then see what happens next year. That's my comment.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, I see your hands up, Susanna, but we're just going to go through the public questions first, and then we'll get back to the board if they have questions. So I see Daniel.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. It's government is an
Ask that you
amazing.
share your name and what town you're in.
Certainly. My name is Daniel Freund, and I live in Freeport.
Thank you.
And our kids have gone through the schools here, and they're long gone. Government is a wonderful thing, and seeing this much participation this evening is really very, very encouraging. The COVID circumstance is teaching us a lot of things, and some of them are actually good. People are learning how to meet their neighbors again. We're learning how to be somewhat more green again. It's not all sad. And what it's also taught us, hopefully, is that we can look a little bit outside the lines. Witness this meeting this evening. This is, if 6 months ago somebody said, hey, I have a proposal for how we can conduct meetings and it's going to be, using webinars, everybody would look at you like you had 4 eyes in your head. That would be these two and those two. But anyway, so I have tried as a local citizen and also as a businessman to bring ideas before the board. And I've been, or before the district. And I am certain that they can save money and labor. Today I answered in request for proposal for the city of Portland for similar services. There are efficiencies that can be realized. As a result of COVID, all of my employees have told me that they never want to come back to work. They all want to work remotely. And so we are getting rid of all of our furniture. We have a great deal of furniture that we can donate to the school district. We just donated 50 laptops. We have 80 more laptops that we can donate. And all I asked was that I have an appointment so that I can explain to people a lot more savings that we can bring to the school. And I cannot get an appointment. So I'm going to vote for this budget, but I'm telling you, there may be other people besides myself who have suggestions that they want to bring to the board. This is not the forum to do it, but there ought to be a way that people can approach the board or members of the decision-making process that will listen. So I'm going to vote for the budget, notwithstanding this other gentleman's concerns about the fact that we are likely to see much harder times in the next year or two ahead. And so all the more reason to be as efficient as we can be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Daniel. I am not seeing any other hands up at this point, but I do know we have a few folks that have called in, and obviously they don't have the ability to raise their hand. Sarah Victor, I see your hand up.
Hi, I'm just going to unmute myself for right now. Many of you may be, sorry, I'm joining you just a few minutes late here. Thank you everybody for being here this evening. So I understand that we are hiring an outside equity consulting firm finally to look at our curriculum. And I was in the process of challenging curriculum embedded in our schools that is racist a couple of years ago. I'm happy to forward any email chains to anybody who would like to read them, but obviously not right now. I want to make sure that before the consultation is finished, we don't continue with existing, obviously racist curriculum. So I would like a reassurance that the Spirit series, especially the Freedom Train, will not be used while we are in the process of conducting this equity audit. And I also would like to say that the fact that we didn't see the problem collectively is the problem. The fact that I needed to learn about this from my 11-year-old son, who was almost in tears about it, because he saw that it was wrong, is part of the problem. So I just want to make sure that we don't continue that curriculum while we're vetting our curriculum. And I had quite a protracted process and lots of documentation if you need to see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Right. I'll give folks a second to find the raise hand budget if they have a question. I see. Okay, so Susanna's hand that was up earlier, I think she put it in the chat. So if people are looking for, she included a link to the sample ballot. So while that's the Freeport sample ballot, the school RSU 5 portion would be the same in all 3 towns. So so if folks are looking for that. So, okay, so I don't have a name on this one, but it's the only hand up. So if you have your hand up, it is your turn to share, and just please just let us know your name and what town you're calling from. Still looking like you're muted. Oh, there you go. Now you're off mute. I think we can hear you. I hear some static. I don't know if it's the microphone, but I'm not hearing any talking coming through. I just hear some static. So it's off mute, but no. So if you're having trouble with the with your mic, if you had a specific question, if you wanted to put that in the chat, you could try typing it in there. Sorry, I don't. I feel terrible without a name. But if you might want to try that if your mic isn't working. And I hear from our tech folks that if you are trying, if you do want to raise your hand and you're calling in on your phone as opposed to on your computer, if you hit *9, that will actually raise your hand in the participant chat. So if any of the folks that are calling in this evening wanted to raise their hand, they could do that with *9. Okay. I think we'll move on. If we have anyone else who has a question, just if we can figure out the tech for our green square friend. And if you wouldn't mind muting the green square, and we will certainly come back if you're able to get your your mic to work, or like I said, feel free to put it in the chat. I see Margaret's iPhone has a question or a comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, hi, my name is Margaret Brownlee. I am a resident of South Portland, Maine. So I'm not a member of the community, but I'm involved in the South Portland community. So I kind of wanted to echo what Sarah had said in terms of making sure that you are creating more equitable and anti-racist curriculum in Freeport and RSU 5. I attended the Cape Elizabeth School Board meeting yesterday, and they're doing some really great things there, using teaching tolerance curriculum, using Howard Zinn curriculum, facing history in ourselves. So there's a lot of resources the superintendent is using over there, and I wanted to, just bring attention to that and hope that some of the money that's being used in the budget for either student support services or any new curriculum or professional development for teachers is allocated to those areas, because especially now in this time with the death of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, it's desperately needed now, not just the
So Margaret, I'm just going to stop you right there.
but for
Your
students,
phone is
teachers,
going
and
in
everyone.
and
So
out. Just two things. One, because this is a public hearing, by law, we can only allow members of the community for which the public hearing is for to speak at our meetings unless there is a vote by the majority present. And I also just want to put out there, for folks who may have missed the beginning, this public hearing piece is specific to the budget for next year. If we have folks that want to address the equity and diversity comments as well as the curriculum, we do have a public comment period later in the agenda. If they wanted to, if they were a member of RSU 5 and wanted to speak during that, they certainly could address it there. So I'm sorry for any confusion, just trying to keep our public hearing separate from our regular board agenda here. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Margaret, but your phone was going in and out, and just wanted to get that distinction out there. So if we had any other questions or comments relative to the budget for next year, I don't know if our folks that were trying to get their tech to work are able to get back in. We'll give folks just a second here. Okay. Oh, okay. We just got the green square. Okay, so it came up in the chat box. So Rod Stimson lives in Durham. His question was, how confident is the board regarding having adequate funding in the budget if we have to go back to remote learning? So do you want me to take that, or you want to speak to that, Becky?
Well, they're asking the board, but I don't mind speaking to it first, but I feel very confident in the budget that we've created that would be able to take care of the remote learning. Obviously, there are some scenarios that could become challenging, but I think that we would just have to do some reallocating of the funds. And we also have received or will be receiving money from the federal government in the amount of about 140,000. So we have grants that can also supplement that need. So I feel very confident that we can fund education, whether we're in remote learning as we finish the year, or if we're in the hybrid approach where some of our kids are going, or whether we get the green light to kind of resume learning as we've known it in the past. In fact, I would say that we realized some savings in this year's budget because of the remote learning. So if we're in the system where we finish the year, I'm very, very confident that our budget can handle that and that we would end up again with more savings. If we're in the hybrid, there may be some challenges, say with transportation, and we recently surveyed our parents, and the ones that have been surveyed said yes, they'd be willing to assist and drive their children to school. And so I think with partnering with our families in the community that we will be good to go in September, no matter what system we're under.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Hopefully that answered your question, Rod. Thank you for getting that in the chat. Sorry we couldn't get the tech to work, the mic for you. I just want to make sure that we give people an opportunity to find that raise hand if they have a question or a comment before we close the public hearing on the budget. So I'm just going to give folks another few seconds if formulate their question or comment or to find the button. Okay. I'm not seeing any additional questions. If you were on the phone and question, feel free to unmute yourself now. Otherwise, I think we would take a motion for consideration and approval. Are you making the motion, Valley? Or did you have a question? For consideration and approval to close the public hearing on the proposed school budget for FY 2021.
So
Thank you, Valley. And I see Maddie's hand up as a second. Thank you for that. So if we don't have any additional questions or comments on the budget, I will remind folks that the referendum vote is Tuesday, July 14th, and we hope everyone can get out and cast their ballot. All right, so we will go through the roll call to close the public hearing. Candy?
yes, yes,
Thank you. Lindsay?
yes,
Jen?
yes,
Susanna?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Mara?
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali?
yes,
Maddie?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And Jeremy?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you all. And thank you for everyone that tuned in. You are obviously welcome to stay for the remainder of our discussion. But if your goal this evening was around the budget, thank you for your participation this evening. So on to number 5 on our budget is, on our agenda is consideration of the minutes. So I would take a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the June 10th, 2020 as presented, barring any errors or omissions. And I will tell you that the adjournment time is not an error on there. That is an accurate time. Vali, thank you. Second from Beth. For all you new to our meetings, we go through our roll call vote several times through the evening. Lindsay,
Yes.
Jen,
yes,
Susanna,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Mara.
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali,
yes,
Maddie,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
and Candy.
yes.
Thank you. Okay, adjustments to the agenda. Dr. Foley.
Yes, I'd like to do a brief report from the superintendent.
Okay, so we will do that under 9, superintendent reports. In the meantime, we don't have anything under good news and recognition for this meeting. We do have a public comment. So if we have folks that wanted to share outside of the budget questions, if they had something they'd like to share with the board, they are certainly welcome to do that now. We just, same process we use for the public hearing, ask that you raise your hand, and when called on, just let us know the name, your name, and the town you live in. And we try to keep comments to 3 minutes. Everybody's talked out, I guess. Okay, so, oh, Jeremy.
I'd just like to say, as a member of the public, I thought that the promotion and graduation ceremonies were just incredibly well done at Mass Landing and at the middle schools. So I really thought they did an amazing job for the hand that they were dealt. So I think it was just very well done.
Yes, I think it was Daniel earlier who said that some amazing things have come out of this strange time we're in, and I think all of the schools have done an amazing job recognizing their kids moving on out of their schools and graduations and promotions. So thank you to all the administrators and staff who made that happen for our students. They were really, really amazing. Susanna.
Yeah, I just wanted to second that and say that I've heard from a handful of people, especially seniors at the high school, who were sort of feeling that it was their final graduation in the district, and saying that they would encourage looking at maybe doing a graduation like that again in the future, and that or something that it was more initially thinking that maybe they weren't getting the graduation they wanted, and then feeling now that it was more special than had they been at Merrill. So I think it was well done to make that special and enjoyable for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Okay, so report from the superintendent.
Okay, so I'm really excited to announce that in partnership with Freeport Community Services, that we will be continuing free breakfast and lunches to any child 18 and under beginning on July the 7th at Durham Community School, Pownell Elementary, and Freeport Middle School, and that will go throughout the summer. The first serving day of the week, and that depends on which building you're in, will provide 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. The second serving day will provide 5 of each. You can obtain meals at any of our locations, and there are no income or residency requirements of any kind. So if you have family or friends visiting for the summer, bring them along as well, and we're more than delighted to feed them. And if you have any questions about the summer meals program, our nutrition director, Erin Dow, her name and contact information is on our website, so please contact her. And I also wanted to just inform the board that the ESP contract passed last Friday with the 94% approval from the people who voted. So that's very exciting, and we're delighted to have that done before July 1st. And lastly, I'd just like to inform everyone that tonight is Kate's last board meeting. Kate, is your video, can you put your video on? There we go. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes to thank Kate for her 9 years of service to RSU 5. And there are so many things that I'm going to miss about you, Kate. I have really valued your work in the past on strategic communications. You were always thinking about better ways that we can communicate with all of our stakeholders. Your work on the Finance Committee has reassured me many times, knowing that you are checking every number twice. I have always trusted and admired your attention to detail, and your memory has come in handy more than once, I know, for Michelle and I. You've been such a team player, and you were willing to continue your work with Region 10 when no one else wanted to do it. And we're delighted that Mara has picked up that baton, and we're in good hands now. Your work on the policy committee will be sorely missed, especially by Cynthia. Your thoroughness and attention to detail to the language and the meaning behind it is critical. You're very attuned to ensuring that the policy will be fairly applied to all students. And I hear that you're going to miss the Krispy Kreme donuts. So you will be missing some things. And this past weekend, I came across a quote that someone sent me years ago. And it says, if everybody is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. And I instantly thought of you because you're always thinking. And I appreciate how through my 4 years in RSU 5, there have been times that you have agreed with me and there have been times that you have disagreed with me. But I've always known that we have always agreed to doing what is best for all of the students in RSU 5 and that we value each other's perspective. And your thinking always pushes me to think more deeply. And your ability to stand alone on an issue is courageous. We began our board retreat last August with lessons from the sea. And one lesson stated, we know only too well that what we are doing is nothing more than a drop in the ocean. But if the drop were not there, the ocean would be missing something. And the RSU 5 board will truly be missing something without your presence. And you have made a difference, and I'm going to miss you greatly. And that concludes my report.
Oh, wow, that's hard to follow. Yeah, so I will just echo Becky's thanks. I know the board has been made better and stronger from your participation, and the kids have all benefited from your commitment to the board. And so I thank you for that. I'm sad to see you go. How am I going to nominate you for the chair of the finance committee before you have a chance to say no? But no, seriously, thank you for everything you've done for RSU 5, for me as a board member, and for the rest of us and the kids. Hopefully you'll join us every now and again for nostalgia, and I fully plan to follow up with you on things I don't remember, because I know you'll hopefully you still take my call. So thank you, Kate. Good luck. Enjoy your Wednesday evenings, and thank you. Okay, so we don't have any administrator reports, board comment or committee reports, policy review, unfinished business. So board discussion of the superintendent's memo in addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So I thought I'd just start with kind of reviewing the memo and where we have been since our last board meeting. Cynthia did, as my memo mentioned, reach out to Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium. And you see there the districts that are using them, the main DOEs, Portland, South Portland, Westbrook, Wells, and some others there. And we've been in contact, and they have agreed to do an audit for the district, and it's quite comprehensive. They'll be looking at all of our demographics. They will then analyze that discipline data across all subgroups. They're also going to be conducting many focus groups with students, staff, administration, board, community, parents, family. They'll be going into the schools and doing some observations, reviewing the curriculum as the previous Sarah had mentioned around the equity series. We will definitely have them review that and give us feedback on that. In addition to that, they'll then put out a report to us, providing us with recommendations where they think we should begin, our steps forward in making all of our schools feel very inclusive and supporting all of our students of color. Following the audit, they will, or as part of the audit, they'll also be reviewing all of our policies. They'll be providing our training, our professional development for all staff around equity and how we can all take steps to become less biased and recognizing our own bias in areas. And then they also will be helping us create the equity committee that I think that the board and I both want to kind of move this work forward. This work will take them 2 years over the next 2 years, but we know, as someone said to me, the true telling will be whether the work continues 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. But they will be working with us for 2 years. The cost of this audit will be approximately $50,000, and it'll be spread across 2 years. So we'll be able to put a line in the budget for this current year. It could be that we can use money from the year that hasn't ended, but we can also use money from the year we're going into. In the superintendent's budget, there's about $17,000 in there for like a facilitator, because often we need a facilitator. We did in the past for the strategic planning, so we can use part of that money. We have money in Title II. Cynthia, Assistant Superintendent Cynthia Alexander, has not written the projects yet, the grant that she does every summer. And so she can write this into a project. So that's how we would fund the $25,000 that we would be needing out of the budget that hopefully will be adopted on July the 14th. In addition to that, we have arranged for the attorney. She's more than willing to come and meet with the policy committee to review case law around the First Amendment and the Confederate flag and answer questions around that. And then all of our schools are either planning on having discussions with staff when they return in the fall, or they have started those discussions. I also know that Morris Street, they have with the Morris Street community, with the parents and teachers, that they are reading How to Be an Anti-Racist and by Ibram Kendi. And so they're meeting to do a book talk via Zoom at the end of July. FHS has met with several groups, and we had the student forum in the past week, and then we had the debrief with the facilitator on Monday. So that work is also moving forward. So I feel like we've made some really good steps since we last met as a board.
Susanna.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Becky. And I appreciate, since the development in perspective, I know when I first sent messages around asking about doing this, there was some mixed review on the board, and it seems that we're moving forward in a direction that I like, and I'm happy with that. I do have a question with knowing that the audit we can expect to take about 2 years, and the student and the fora that are going on, the discussion last night for anybody who was part of that on the police in the town of Freeport, and the readings that are going on in town, the faculty, the parents. What changes can we expect in the fall? I know there's been some discussion on curricula, especially history and literature, and history and English. I'm just wondering where we stand with, obviously I think everybody hopefully is in agreement that waiting 2 years to make any significant change is irrelevant and not a direction that's helpful. So I just want to know what, come the beginning of school year, what can we expect? That makes sense.
So I'm glad you're asking that question, because I feel like I misled you when I said it's going to take 2 years. The audit's not going to take 2 years. So they anticipate that the audit will take 4 to 6 weeks, and that we're expecting them to arrive in September. And so by November, we should be getting the results, or, sometime in the late fall, we expect to get those results. It's just that the work, with them working the professional development, possibly the review of, depending on how many policies we have them review, that would be the ongoing work. But I don't want you to think that nothing's going to happen until, 2 years. And so I think that we can expect, as they do the audit and we're connecting with them and they're giving us feedback, I think you can, we'll be reporting on those smaller interim steps. I guess I would say. And I would say that I do know that the high school has started, that they have the English department and the social studies department on their own. They're looking at their curriculum to see some, what changes might be made, like in the fall with different units.
So those changes we can expect to be enacted come the fall term. I think that's what, I realize that.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that the audit.
Yes.
Years. I understand there's going to be some give and take and choice, going back and forth.
Yes.
So the process takes a while, but to know that the audit itself was 4 to 6 weeks. But the just want to make sure that the activity that's going on now, that we don't lose that momentum or wait until we have sort of permission from the auditors to move forward, if that makes sense. So just, the changes that are going to be enacted by Labor Day versus, because we know some stuff now. So
yes, I think anytime we know more, we then act on it. So I think, obviously as they look at their curriculum, if they, they can, there's not anything that prevents them from making changes. And I'm sure that even in the audit, we'll say, here are some changes that we made, and get the reflections on that.
Valley.
Thank you, Becky. That is great that you're doing all that work, and thank you to your team, administrators, teachers, everyone, and also to the community that basically encouraged us to engage in this work. Yeah, a couple of questions I wanted to make sure, and I know pretty much what the answer is, but I want to have 100% certainty that the audit isn't just for race, it's for diversity of all types. So ethnic, race, gender, religious, everything, correct?
Cynthia Alexander is the one that has been in contact with them. And so I'm going to see whether she's had discussion around that.
Okay.
Cynthia, are you?
Yeah, I just unmuted. Hello. The organization itself is called the Center for Equity. I haven't had specific conversations to that level. I can get you that information. I can send that to the board. I'm in contact with a woman named Carmen Rowland, and she's, she'll get back to me on that. But that is my assumption, and that to me would be the direction we would want to go, not just in one vein, but equity all across. So I will get that information to you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And the other mention of writing a grant, I think this is a very fertile time to be basically applying for grant money to fund this kind of work. So I would encourage you to maybe take a little extra time that you otherwise would to make an effort to find sources of funding for this work, because I believe that those sources exist and we take advantage of them.
Yes, and I do think that Mara had offered to do that. So we would love to take you up on that, Mara, if you're still willing to look into that and be willing to write those grants for us as we kind of focus on remote learning this summer.
Happy to help.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if I'll be as good as you, but anything I can do.
Thank you.
Maddie.
Thanks. I really want to say how encouraging it was to see this memo in advance of this meeting. And I want to thank you, Becky, and the principals and staff in all of our school buildings for really quick work, but also thoughtful work. It's apparent to me that there's a lot of thought and commitment behind this work, which is really meaningful to the board and to the community, I feel. So I really appreciate that commitment. I just also want to mention that I really appreciated in the note coming out from Jen Gulko at the high school, there seems to be a real focus on the culture at the school. And I think that is incredibly important. So I'm really pleased to see that. And I think that as we focus on culture, we're focusing on equity and inclusion for anyone who might feel disenfranchised in any way. And that's also very encouraging. A more specific question related to the work with the policy committee. I'd like to know about the timing of that because we are losing Kate. And I know there was some discussion about potentially doing some policy work over the summer, which I'm totally in favor of, but not if we're missing a member of that committee. And I don't recall when we vote in new members of the committee, if that doesn't happen till August. So, you know, although I'm eager to do that work, I want to make sure that we're fully staffed on that committee.
So I think our plan was to do the committee work at the board retreat. And I think we also, you know, want the consultation with we're paying, that's part of what we're paying for. And then I really want the attorney to weigh in before we do that work.
So you're saying then that would be after the board retreat, that would begin in the fall?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Candy.
All right, I just wanted to share this. Susanna, you mentioned English history curriculum, that kind of thing. And I have a friend who's now retired who taught middle school in Bath and worked with her students on, it has to do with Maine's history around these issues. And her students and their project were asked to come and present it to the state legislature. And so I did ask her if she'd come and you know, do anything, but no, she's fully retired. But there are quite a few things that she has that I could share with folks that, you know, they can have. There's a book called Lizzie Bright and the Buckminster Boy, which is a young adult novel, it's middle school, and it's all, you know, it's based on true stories. And a lot of this was about Malaga Island and the history of Malaga out from Bath, and when things Maine was doing were brought to national attention. So anyway, I can share some of that stuff when people get to that.
Great, thanks.
I see hands flying up, flying down, flying, oh, up again. Maura.
I was going to let Susanna, but respond if she wanted to, but I had a couple of questions. But first I wanted to echo the other board members and say thank you for this. I appreciate it. And I am, as I'm sure you probably might have guessed, I'm very pleased that we're going in this direction. And glad that you've hired these folks to do this. So the questions I had were regarding the curriculum. Will they help with that sort of redesign of the curriculum, or how hands-on are they, or will they just review and sort of make recommendations and then it will be up to us to redesign the curriculum? I guess what I'm getting at is I'm wondering if there's any support that they can provide in helping with that, with the curriculum redesign.
So I'll refer that to Cynthia, who's had the direct discussion. I don't know whether you've gotten into that kind of detail, Cynthia?
Yeah, we have not gotten into that kind of detail yet. They definitely review the curriculum and make recommendations. They also have lots of professional development. I'm not sure if that is a piece of that, but I can follow up with that. I did look to answer Vali's earlier question. I put it in the chat, but as I was reviewing some of the documents that they use, it does clearly show inclusion of all kinds of diversity. So to answer that one, but then now Maura, I'll get back to you on this other one.
Okay, great. Because I know, you know, maybe, I don't know if you and our teachers could use some immediate support or might have questions about that work that they're doing to change things for the fall. I would want, if these folks couldn't provide support, if there's other supports, if you need that, because I know there's a lot of things that we're going to be trying to do come fall, whether it's going back to school full time or trying to do an in between. And I just want to make sure everyone has the support they need. So I know that I've seen a lot of other great resources out there from like Holocaust and human rights in Augusta that I know, where I know our students have gone to visit and things like that. So
I would oh, I'm sorry. I would add that there's like content specialists at the DOE that when you're doing curriculum, you can reach out to them too to provide resources.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's great. Yeah, because I think my main concern on that is that some of the specific concerns that we've heard about particular parts of the curriculum, whether it's certain texts with certain language in it, or the Spirit series, that I would hate for us to have just heard that and not address those. But I know you not address those and then go back to school this fall and have our students wondering like what's that's about. My other question was about Region 10. I just wanted to suggest, and I can certainly do this as a Region 10 board member, letting them know that we'll be doing this and letting the director, or I don't know, Becky, I just wanted to make that suggestion of that maybe you could reach out to their director and let them know, because I know one of the public comments we had was specific to a student experience at Region 10, which I made sure that they were aware of. But for us to be doing this work and then have it, not carried over to Region 10, I just think that Region 10 should know what all the sending schools are doing. And then hopefully we'll take action as well. So I just wanted to make that suggestion that we communicate with that with them, and I'll certainly share it with the Region 10 board.
I met with the Region 10, as you know, it's going to be Paul Przanowski. And he's not starting until August the 1st, but we had a meeting about remote learning, and I did talk to him a little bit about the concern that was shared by the student from Region 10, and that we are going to set up a time to talk more in August when he's fully on board, and at that time I can also make him aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Susanna.
Thank you. Just a question a little bit more specifically on some things that we've just been discussing. I understand, that when faculty reviewing their curriculum and making changes among themselves and sort of looking out prior to the equity audit what they think is working, isn't working, or identifying problematic areas. One thing that I am a little bit concerned about, aside from that, is student discussions and students. So we've had students come forward. Obviously, some of the administration has met with students. In particular, the forum last week and other conversations that have gone on with students. I'm just aware that, I know how hard it is for me to come forward and say something that makes me very uncomfortable. So I'm assuming, and having talked to people, it's very hard for people to come forward and talk. And I want to make sure that those voices are getting heard and that some kind of action is happening, so that we're not just kind of saying, thanks for coming forward, we'll take this forward, and then the students still have to come back in the fall, and they're maybe feeling a little bit in limbo. What was heard, what wasn't heard, what's being taken at, what action has happened, what hasn't. And I just want to know that student feedback, what's happening with student feedback, what is that, where is it going, and what are we doing with it? Just because I think it would be very devastating to come forward and speak your heart out and tell a lot, and then feel that you're not being recognized for it. So that was my main question. And then, just as Mara said, other organizations that aren't necessarily involved in equity audits are certainly still available to provide support. So I think I'd encourage use of those as and if we need. But I just want to know how student feedback is being honored at the moment.
So I don't know if there's a easy answer for that. I mean, I think all feedback is considered, and then, where we can make changes, we make changes. So I don't, we that's probably not exactly what you're wanting to hear. I can ask Jen Gulko to speak about, you know, I know they're kind of they had a staff meeting around uh, some of the letters that the kids wrote. And, I think I think part of why we're taking the action that we're taking with the audit is because of the voices that we've heard. Um, and, you know, even when we hear something like what you heard from the former speaker about the Spirit series, that I don't think is around not ever using the Spirit series again, but there was a particular play that we chose to do that, we will definitely look at either revising how we use that one, or we'll go with something totally different. But I think that as we make change, we can definitely reach back out to the students to let them kind of know what we're doing. But Jen, do you have any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I would just share, Susanna, that I don't know if I didn't share my letter that I sent out to the community, which went to the students, staff, and parents with the board, which is something that we could, that I could absolutely share. But all of the action steps came from student feedback directly. So anything that we are planning to do for both the short and the long term has come from those student conversations and reflections on that. So we actually haven't had any meetings with any parents. There haven't been any parents or community members that have asked to speak with us. All of the meetings have either been with our students who will be returning in the fall, graduates of the class of 2020, and then we've met with some students who are graduates of 2019 and 2018. So that letter that I sent out to everyone was taken directly from our notes from those meetings of things that we had heard repeatedly from students, ideas that they had. Today at the, we typed up all the notes from that students created at the forum for what they would like to see for action. One of the things that our facilitator said was she was incredibly impressed and that we should be proud of our students, that they were able to say what they would like to see. She said in other schools, she'd seen high school students struggle with that, where our kids did really well to say, this is what we want to see happen. And so all of that was incorporated into the ways that we are taking action right away, or building on things that we've already been working on, or are hoping to work on in the longer term.
Thank you, Jen. And I did see the letter and appreciate that you put that forward. Thank you.
Lindsay.
Just to echo what everyone said, I'm so grateful for our administrators picking this ball up and really working with it. And it's not easy work. I guess the question that I have is when you might meet with the lawyer about the First Amendment stuff, if that'll be over the summer. I think I'm thinking about certain language, certain words that I believe have no place in a school. And I'm thinking about emblazoned things on t-shirts or belt buckles that make certain segments of the population rightfully uncomfortable, which goes against our strategic goal number 1. So I'm wondering when you might be meeting with the lawyer. And I know that we can't be the only school in the country wondering these questions. I also want to say how meaningful restorative justice can be. So when are we meeting with the lawyer? If they say this goes against First Amendment rights, do we have any leeway as a school system to say, hold on, we're going to put this in our dress code because it fundamentally goes against what we believe and want to promote in our school, even if, it's like check your racism at the door kind of thing. that may be fine out in the real world, but where we're teaching, hopefully, I love the sign at Moore Street. I think, what is it, Julie? Kindness matters, or kindness is important. It's emblazoned right outside the office. If we are indeed teaching kindness, compassion, and tolerance, I believe that there's no place for some of these symbols that I'm thinking about. And if a lawyer comes back from Drummond Woodsum and says, well, this is First Amendment stuff, do we have any ability to say, well, that's fine, but it gets checked at the door because it doesn't go with what we're teaching? And then the third thing is, if those get violated, use of certain words, certain clothing that causes harm to others, I really want to suggest that restorative justice is an amazing, I've had the privilege of guiding a young ninth grader through some restorative justice work, and it was incredibly meaningful. And we still turn and look at him, and he learned a tremendous amount. It was not a fun situation. He was only 3 weeks into being a freshman. He's never been in trouble before in his life. He learned a ton. So I would like to suggest that restorative justice matters. And if certain young people aren't learning these things in their homes, which is highly likely, I believe we owe it to our students to be teaching them what is right. Whether they go out in the world and use it or not is another matter. But our job is to educate compassionate, tolerant, wide-minded young people. Thank you guys so much.
So I think Cynthia put in the chat box that she's coming September the 11th, which is the first policy meeting, and then we'll have the committees formed, and so they'll have their all of the committee there. And I think she will answer your second question about, can we go ahead and go forward with it, even if it does violate the First Amendment rights. And I don't think it's clear cut. I think with that you're talking about, Lindsay, I think there are places that have been able to ban certain symbols, but I think there's a threshold you have to pass. And so I think that's, I haven't talked to Melissa. I don't know how she feels about us doing that in RSU 5, but that will be a good discussion. And even though it's a committee meeting, other members can attend and just not participate for any of those that are interested. And then I agree with you fully about restorative justice. I think that all of our principals agree with that, and where possible, we're trying to do that in all of the schools, because we see the power of restorative justice versus just, consequences, that it's much more powerful when kids can learn from their mistakes and then move forward.
Thank you, Lindsay. Jen.
So this is what I kind of hate about the raise hand thing, is because I'm going to go back to something that was brought up that Susanna talked about with the students and feeling like the students' voices were heard. And, I am lucky enough to have a daughter who just graduated, who's been very involved in this. She was involved in the meeting with Charlie and Jen right after posting some flyers at the school. And she was also involved in the forum. And I talked to her quite a bit about it. And what I got from her was that she and her friends and the groups that were there felt extremely respected, and they felt like they were listened to and they were heard. And I think that is just great. And I think that just shows a lot about Jen and Charlie and, and all the administrators, and how they put that first, to listen to students. And not that parents aren't important, but I like how you said that, Jen, too, is that, right now, really all we're listening to is students. So I think that that's great. And I just, some feedback is I feel like the kids that have been involved, from what I've heard, have felt that it's been well worth their while to do that.
Thanks, Jen. Vali.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what Jen said about the student forums and how those went and how so many students showed up and were comfortable participating. I do want to point out though that there's a number of students who may not be so comfortable participating. So I'm hoping that as this process evolves, not only at the high school, but especially at the middle and lower grades, that parents are heavily involved in the feedback loop. Because parents see at home aspects of their own children that don't necessarily become public in school, and some kids are not comfortable. And so I trust that parents will be involved as well.
And that will be part of the audit. And I think one of the reasons I feel that's so important is that, you know, they may very well do those audits without any administrators involved so that it will be more comfortable for, you know, parents or students especially to speak up, because I think it is sometimes hard for, I was at the student forum and some of the kids didn't feel comfortable, you know, speaking up, and they just listened. And I think that was brave of them to even come out to make their presence known. So we will be seeking feedback in a multitude of ways so that, you know, all people that want to be heard, we want to hear from them.
Thank you, Valley. Maddie.
I'm kind of just echoing everybody, but my kid was there too. She was pleased with the way that meeting went, and it was clear to me as a parent getting the email from the high school that was a follow through from that event. And I'm so pleased that it was facilitated. I think that was a really important step to ensuring that the kids felt more comfortable using their voice. I do think that the turnout was a little disappointing. And I think it's pretty hard, unavoidable. Everybody's exhausted first week of summer. But I think it's a really great point that was just kind of raised in the work to create a more inclusive and equitable culture. Also comes the work to encourage student voice, because as encouraged as I think we all feel about, you know, the steps we're taking to move forward, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for young voices in the first place. And it's, you know, it's troubling that it takes, you know, a national climate like we're dealing with right now in order for us to take action. And I think, you know, whenever I hear from a member of the community or my own kids about something, I say, what are you doing? How are you speaking up? And I think that's part of our role as educators, is to encourage active participation in community. So sorry, a little more long-winded than I meant, but this is a good first step in the right direction. And I hope we'll really be focused on raising student voice more and more.
Thank you, Maddie. Maura.
So I want to share just a concern that I have, I guess, a general concern, and that is that, you know, as far as I know, we have an all-white board and we have all-white administrators. And I think that we all have good intentions, but that sometimes that's not enough. And I think because we're all white, that fundamentally shapes our worldview. And it may shape how we look at things like curriculum and how we look at any one of these and look at and might approach any one of these things. And I just think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, that because we are white, we may not have the same perspective on a certain performance of a piece of curriculum as a student of color, or a certain text as a student of color. And I feel that this has been a blind spot for us. And I think that the fact that we're white is part of the reason we had that blind spot. If we had a board member of color or an administrator of color, maybe we would have undertaken some of these things sooner. But I think because we're not faced with them when we go out into our daily lives, it's not necessarily the thing that's the top of our mind, even though our students were experiencing it. And I guess all of that is just to say, I want us to keep that in mind so that as we approach some of these difficult things that we're going to be doing, we understand that our worldview is fundamentally different than the students entering our halls, some of them. So thank you.
Thanks, Mara. And just sort of to layer with that, I would be interested to hear when they're doing the, the PD around bias and things like that, if there is anything for PD for the board around that. I mean, to the point of what are we not even recognizing, and should we be thinking about and recognizing in our role as a board member for, not a hugely diverse student population, but there is diversity that we are responsible for every one of them. So I would be interested to hear if that is an option that they offer. I don't know, but I think that would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And if I could correct myself, I guess I don't just mean worldview, I mean how we experience the world and how we're treated and how, all of that. So, but that would be great. I agree. Michelle, thanks.
Susanna.
A couple things. First of all, to go on your point, Michelle, right now about board diversity, et cetera. I mean, I'm on another board where I'm on a DEI committee for, and part of that is about looking at the composition of the board, looking at the composition of the organization and the staffing. And we can't necessarily choose board members, and we can't necessarily choose who our staff is going to be based on sort of a perceived role that they might fill based on something, but we can work to ensure inclusion and the feeling that everybody feels part of the board. So there are a lot of materials that, and I think I mentioned this last time, that I think there's some homework that the board should be doing and that the administration should be doing, so that going forward, we're coming from, aware of who we are and what we represent, but also, just that level of inclusion. So there's some stuff there that we should be doing. And also just wanted to know a little bit more possibly from Jen, but yeah, Sarah just added about the Waking Up White book by Debbie Irving. If anybody hasn't read that, that's quite good. Robin D'Angelo, who wrote White Fragility, is speaking next Tuesday. I don't know, but I think I sent that around to everybody. And I've enjoyed her in the past. So that would be, if anybody is interested, I'd suggest that. I think I sent the link out. But student on the forum last week, the student forum, and I appreciate Jen and Charlie and everybody's put all of that together, but concerns about students who didn't show up to that, or students in other grades who were not part of that. We're just wondering what opportunities they have for sort of just staying in the feedback loop. So students that maybe did speak, Jen, and maybe you could answer this in that sense. Is there sort of a direct feedback loop or a clear further discussion loop, and students who were not part of that or didn't feel comfortable speaking up, either didn't feel comfortable or just other grades, what their opportunities for further input are, or are they on their own for coming forward?
We've talked about that, but we don't have a concrete plan. Like Dr. Foley said, we just did our debrief on Monday with our facilitator, and our plan is to speak with her again. I think she worked well with us, the kids. She worked really well with our kids. The first thing that we talked about was just reaching out to the kids who didn't come. We don't know why, other than it was a beautiful summer day, and our facilitator said her quote was that summer won that day. And so that was our first plan, was to reach out to those kids, being the ones who had self-selected to come, and just let them know that there's going to be more opportunities, that they could come either in groups, that we can, Charlie and I are at school throughout the summer, so that we can figure out those opportunities. And then, in the past, when we have done student discussions, we call them student summits at school, what we've done is that some kind of reflection or feedback questions go out to the whole student body, where they're able to anonymously write comments to us. And then we have the forum that comes after that. The student summit is what we've called them. And we usually open up 50 spots for that. And so that gives kids a chance to anonymously share feedback, and they can also come to the discussion, or if they're not comfortable, then they can just share feedback. And so we've talked about, we've done those over the course of the past 5 years on different topics, but we've also talked about having other people facilitate those. That's usually Charlie and I that facilitate those. And so we've talked about just kind of that dynamic of us being the leaders of the school, and just that alone makes some kids are very, very comfortable to speak to us, and some kids are not. And we're definitely aware of that. So talking about having somebody else lead those student summit and student forums without us even being there. So we're looking into different ways that students will have voice, but it's definitely not that they just have to be the ones to reach out to us. So, we'll move forward with some of the ways that we've done that in the past, and then think about some new ways to get more voices.
Thank you, Cynthia. Reverend Jen.
And Jen, I think you'd also talked about just trying to get the student council more active this year in doing things other than fundraising, which I think is a great idea too.
Yeah, we've definitely, that's one of the big takeaways that we have talked about this week, that we spoke about with Dr. Foley and with the facilitator, of having some different roles, especially roles that are not elected. So student council and student class officers are elected positions by the student body. And I think we have a lot of student leadership in individual clubs, but I also think that there's some direction that we can take in the fall to set up some leadership opportunities for students who might not be elected by their peers, but still want to have a voice and be involved in leadership. So that's definitely something that we're going to pursue.
I think the board, if they wanted to, they could also, have a student rep on the board where you reached out and just asked, and it doesn't have to be elected. And if the board wanted more diversity on the board from a student voice, I think that's one option that could be discussed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for everybody's work to date and work on the horizon, because as is clear, there is quite a bit ahead of us. So thank you to the administrators who've already started that work, and the board members' willingness to help and guide the work. I think it's all going to move us in the right direction. So I appreciate everybody's efforts so far and what's to come. So
I would say, just as a straw poll, everybody's okay with me moving forward with the audit. Just checking. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I feel like we probably, if there was strong opposition, I think hopefully we would have heard. Jeremy just unmuted himself. I don't know if he's got something to share.
Oh, no, I just clicked yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. We do not have any new business or personnel items on the agenda for this evening, so we are up to our second public comment. So same rules as the first time. If you have something to share, please raise your hand. We'll call on you, ask you just share your name and where you're from, and comments to 3 minutes. Give folks a second to find the button. Okay. Well, given that, then I would take a motion for consideration and approval to enter into executive session as outlined in 1 MRSA Section 4056A for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's evaluation. I saw Beth and Susanna, thank you. And so we will do a quick roll call vote. Jen? Did we lose Jen? Okay, well, we'll skip Jen for now. Susanna,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Mara,
Yes.
I vote yes. Folly,
Yes.
Maddie,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Candy,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Did Jen come back? Okay. 10-0 on that vote. All right, so we will just take a quick second to clear the lines. Thank you for everyone who joined our meeting this evening. We just ask that you sign off at this time so we can enter our executive session.